Welcome back to How to Craft Fair. This is episode 7 in the How to Become a Craft Fair Organizer series. In this video, we're going to be talking about mapping the layout. It's an extremely important episode in our journey, so I'm going to keep the intro pretty short. I'm going to show you everything that you should do before you map the hall layout, and then I'm going to take you through a designer and show you how you can actually come up with your own design as detailed as you want for your next event. Let's go ahead and get started. So my first piece of advice is when you book the venue for the event, be sure to ask the facility manager or whoever your contact is at the venue for a hall map. Now, if one isn't available, measure the venue dimensions where you plan to have booths set up and create your own map. So what I would recommend is investing in a 100-foot tape measure. I'll drop a link below for the one that I use, and you can check that out or find one that works out for you. But I like the 100-foot tape measure. It's a big even number that you're going to be able to work with easily. Sorry for everybody outside of the US who uses the metric system, but I'm sure that there's something comparable for you. But again, if the venue does not have a layout, you're going to have to make one yourself, and you need to be precise. Okay, so measure out all the walls, and you can sketch this as you go, so your sketch doesn't need to be precise, but the numbers have to be, okay? Because we're going to use all that later when we go into the design program where we actually make everything exact, okay? So your sketch doesn't need to be perfect, but the numbers should be on point, okay? So measure out the entire dimensions of the facility where you're going to have booths, and then we're going to use that later. Now, as you're doing this, you should mark on your sketch where the electrical spaces are available. So again, the sketch might not be to exact dimensions, okay, because it's a rough drawing. But again, where we are marking the numbers on a wall. So let's say, for example, just to make it easy, one wall is 120 feet, okay? So in that 120 feet, you should be marking off, or at least taking some kind of note saying, okay, there's an electrical outlet at the 30th, 50th, and 70th feet on this wall. Okay, because again, we're going to be able to use that later as we're placing our booths in the diagram to say, okay, this booth falls on electrical outlet and this one does and this one does. Okay, so that's going to help us to be more precise when we're booking vendors who might need electricity, where these particular booths are going to fall in the layout. And of course, with the electrical outlets, be sure to either test yourself or confirm with the facility staff that they're all in proper working order, okay? Because you don't want to do all this work to map out the electrical booths only to find out that half of them are non-functional, okay? So just be sure that you kind of cover your butt with this particular step. Now, another thing that you should be doing with the facility manager is confirming what are the loading and unloading areas and where the visitors and the vendors should be parking. Ensure that this is all part of your layout and your diagram. Also confirm what, if any, areas of the facility cannot be blocked. So for example, any kind of emergency exits, fire extinguishers, electrical panels, anything that might be considered basically off limits for your mapping. Okay, so we'll keep those zones in mind as well for areas that cannot be used in any way. So when you're in the facility and it's likely going to be empty and you're mapping the layout and trying to envision your event inside the facility, be sure to maximize the space that you've got. So think about the flow of the traffic, the visitor traffic. Think about whatever seating might be available to people who just want to take a rest, or maybe you have some food vendors. So think about areas where they can sit and eat their food. So consider that. The width of the aisles is extremely important to map in your layout. Don't have your aisles too tight, okay? But you have to consider that there's going to be flows of traffic in both directions, and not only just people walking by, but there's going to be people standing outside or in front of these booths. So that kind of eats up some space in the aisle. Okay, so think about people who might be congregating around booths or around food vendors or whatever you might have, and then consider the flow of traffic that is in addition to the people who are standing around. Okay, so it's not just about the traffic, it's about everybody around the area plus the traffic. Also, be sure to map out where the restrooms are located, not only for yourself and the vendors, but the public restrooms that everybody will be using. If there's any kind of difference in that, or if everybody's just going to be going to like the same set of restrooms, so keep that in mind. Be sure to plan out where the concessions and the food is going to be, the drinks, or if there's a bar. Again, just maintain balance between filling the space, but also maintaining breathability in the venue and to avoid overcrowding. So you want to have that flow maintained, and it's just basically a balancing act between maximizing the number of booths and vendors that you can have, of course, for yourself as an organizer, but then making sure that everybody is comfortable inside of the event. So while we're talking about that balancing act, when it comes to the booths themselves, you want to make the booths large enough for vendors to be happy, but you also need to create enough booths to be profitable as an event organizer. So this balance is very important. What I would recommend doing is 10 by 10 booths. This is just kind of like a standard booth size that vendors are very used to. They're accustomed to planning their setups around a 10 by 10. And then for you, the organizer, this is by far the easiest size to work with when you're mapping your hall layout. Okay, it's just a very basic measurement to work with, and it makes it easy to create the layout. So I would recommend a 10 by 10. When we create kind of like a mock-up later on in this video, that's what we'll be using as a 10 by 10. So it's just a very nice size to work with for everyone. And typically vendors who need more space, again, they are pretty used to going ahead and just reserving 2 booths. Okay, so they have like a 20 by 10 area. So again, the 10 by 10 is very easy to work with, and if a vendor needs more space, they won't feel weird about doubling up. That's pretty standard. And then another thing to keep in mind before you actually start mapping out and drawing things out is that you want to plan for some kind of an event info booth near the entrance where most people will be walking into the event. If you plan on charging an admission fee, you'll also need an area up front for that, obviously. So regardless of the admission fee, though, you should have at least some sort of a welcoming booth set up near the entrance. So you have to kind of keep that entrance area very clear to reserve for yourself as an organizer, either for the admissions or for some kind of welcoming table that you can welcome the guests at. So just be sure to reserve this space up front. All right, so now with all this in mind, we're going to go ahead and check out the program that I use to map layouts. Now, it is, of course, online, but if you aren't exactly tech savvy and you're saying to yourself, oh, geez, like, is there a way to just kind of do this on graph paper? It's technically possible, okay? But it's very, very dicey because it's not as precise as what we're about to do, okay? So I would encourage you to follow along. Even if you're not very tech savvy, you might surprise yourself, okay? Because I'm going to show you in detail, so I hope that you at least consider using this. And for those of you who are pretty tech savvy, I'm going to go into some detail and show you how to do pretty specific things and view the layout from all sorts of different angles, and even get a 3D view that kind of takes you inside the experience to show you not just like an overhead drawing view, but you'll almost be able to feel what it's like to be in there. Okay, so here we go. Let's go ahead and get started. Okay, and so the program that I use is on a website called socialtables.com. It's run by a company called Cvent. Could be Cvent, not exactly sure, but it's socialtables.com, and I just have a free plan. Okay, so basically you can create a mock-up, and that's all that you really need, unless you're going to be designing a whole bunch of different venues and all this different stuff. So you can check out like their pricing plans for different tiers of memberships and all that. But there are other companies that offer this type of service as well. Okay. So find something that works for you, find something that you're comfortable with. But as I said, I used Social Tables in the past and I was pretty happy with how this all is configured. And I feel like it's pretty user friendly and self-explanatory. But to create an event, you would go up here to create a new event, which would be also creating a new layout. Okay. So you'd go up here and we're going to use this one right here that I've titled Test Pavilion. Okay, so we'll click on this just to get into it. And right here, it's going to show you a diagram. Now, the diagram basically is the layout. Okay, now you can do all sorts of stuff on this program. So you can have an attendee list, which could be like your vendors, any kind of event documents associated with the event. So you could keep those here to keep it all together. As I said, Social Tables is not the only company that has programs like this for event planners, but this is what they offer. Okay, so let's go into the diagram section and we can see the bare bones layout that I have prepped for us today. All right, and if you click on it, the only thing that I've really done with this layout is basically set the dimensions of the facility. Okay, so I've gone with just a very generic shape that's going to be easy for us to work with. However, if you need to set a different shape or even alter the shape that you've set, so maybe you went back to the facility and say, for example, like you measured something wrong and you were off by like, I don't know, 5 or 10 feet or whatever, all that you have to do is come up to where it says File on the top left. And if you go down to Diagram Settings, it's going to show you the room dimensions. Okay, and so for everybody watching outside of the US, you can also select this as metric. Okay, so we did talk about that and we kind of joked about that earlier, but you, of course, would have the option to set it as metric units and be able to work with it as well. So whatever you need it to be set as, you can do that right here. And any kind of adjusting that's needed, you can go ahead and adjust it even after you've created the layout. Okay, so no big deal. Now, if we close this and go back, we have a 160 by 160 foot room. And down here in this corner, I've created a few lines, okay, because in this particular facility that I have in mind for today, there is almost like a little small atrium that you walk into before you essentially walk into the really big hall, okay? And this is where we liked having our admission fee or admission booth and all that stuff set up, our welcoming table and all that was in here, okay? So if you want to block like a certain section off, or you want to do something like this where you're kind of creating a side room, all that you have to do is create a line and start to draw that out. So I'll show you how to do that right here. If you go to the left-hand side right here, there's going to be different options that you can start to utilize. And this one right here kind of looks like a ruler and it says lines. So if you click on this one, there's going to be two different headers. One says ruler tool, the other one says line tool. We're going to use the line tool to draw a specific line, and just go ahead and click and drag your mouse. All right, so it's created this line when you let go. And what we did was 34 feet and 4 inches. Now let's say you needed a line that was 25 feet. Okay, well, you made it too long. No big deal. All you have to do is click on this to edit the numbers. And if you go to 25 feet and then you enter in 0 inches, you can actually see it changing in real time. Okay, so now the line is much shorter. So again, this is why I recommend that you be very, very specific when you're at the facility. If they don't provide you with a diagram, make very, very accurate measurements of the walls and any kind of rooms or side rooms or atriums, entrances that you might need to notate later on, because now we can be very, very precise with these and enter them in exactly. This is just going to be a big relief for you. It's going to be a big stress relief, because if you're planning an event for a first time and you're creating a layout for a first time, The biggest source of nerves for me as an organizer was just hoping that I planned my layout correctly. But when you can be this precise, it takes a lot of that, stress and worry heading into that first event. Like, oh my God, I hope all these booths fit in here, and I hope that all the room is appropriate and all that stuff, So again, just being precise is going to save you a lot of stress later. All right, so obviously I put in these 3 lines already. They're different measurements. So you can see this one's 28 feet. The center section ended up being 25. And then this final section over here ended up being just shy of 17 feet. Okay, so we've got this walled off. Now it's time to start putting stuff into the facility, to start filling it out. So one thing that I mentioned I liked having was a big welcoming table, especially if you have admission fees. Okay, so let's go ahead and enter that in. Now, there's a couple of different ways that you can do this. You can set it up as a booth because, it's technically a booth, right? It's just eating up space that is otherwise occupied by aisles, right? So if you go to this object, it looks like a chair. If you click on it and then you click on trade show, it's going to have an option for booth. And if you click on that, the default booth size comes up as 20 by 10 feet. So let's just go ahead and place that down into this section. And let's just say, for the sake of argument, that the welcoming table area is going to be 2 8-foot tables. Okay, so we need 16 by about 10 feet. So let's place this down. You just left click on your mouse and it'll place it. Now let's go ahead and adjust the length to 16 feet. All right, there we go. So again, in real time, it changed. You can see it's much shorter now. And let's say we want to rotate this so it's kind of just facing straight on. All you have to do is hover your mouse over this kind of spinning arrow and it's going to rotate it as much as you want. Okay, so you can flip it any direction, rotate it around, and let's just say that we want it kind of facing the front here. Okay, now that we have that set, we can let that go. And now let's say that we want to put a label on this just to provide a little bit of clarity in our layout and make sure that everything is labeled. So if you go to object name, you can enter in admission. All right. Now see here, it actually is not lining up right, okay, because it's kind of going on the skinny side. We can fix this by just flipping these two. Okay, so if we put the 10 feet here and the 16 feet over here, it's going to basically solve our problem here with the object name label. So if we go to 10 feet and then we go to 16 feet, there we go. Now that looks great. And all that we have to do is turn it one more time. And there we are. So now we have the admission booth all set up on the layout. Very nice. Now, let's say, for example, that you want to label some doors, okay? So maybe you have entrance doors and you want people to only be able to enter certain doors, and then you want people to exit certain doors. If we go back up to objects, and it's already in booth, so we need to back out, and down here is doors and stairs. So we click on that. Let's say it's a set of double doors, which is, pretty common at event venues. And it's gonna allow us to place it wherever we want. So let's just place it right here. Okay, and you can see how the doors, I'm gonna zoom in a little bit so we can see this better. I probably should have did that a while ago, but that's okay. We're thinking about it now, right? Okay, so here is your zoom in and your zoom out down here. And this will allow you to come in real tight on the venue. And let's say that we want these doors to swing open as our entrance. All right, that's great. And we'll turn it, rotate it, and then we'll click it and drag it and have it come down here. Okay, so that will be our entrance doors. Now, let's say we want to go ahead and just put our exit doors in right away. All you have to do is click an existing set of doors. And if you right click, you can copy, and then you can paste. Okay, so simple, like we always do, copy and paste, right click, or if you're on a Mac, Command C, Command V, that type of thing. However you want to do it, very simple. Now if we take our doors and we go this way, and let's just say, for example, we want them to signify an outward direction, we could go like that. Or if you want them to say that, okay, these doors are going to swing in as well, you can go like that. And if you feel like labeling these, this is where you can drop text into your layout. So you can just click this T right here for text. And if you click anywhere on the diagram and start typing, this will come up right here. So we can add text and we'll say enter. This is way too big of a text in my opinion, so we'll knock this down to about 35. All right, great. So that is our enter. And then if we right click that, copy and paste that, then we have a head start already. And we can just switch this to exit. All right, and then move it around as needed. Great, we can put that there, put that there. All right, fantastic. So that's our entrance and exit. Obviously, this doesn't look perfect. I'm rushing through this just to show you how to do it, okay? But let's back out now. Other way. All right, so as we back out, now we can start to see that front area taking shape. Okay, that's starting to look nice, and there's a little bit of an understanding there of what's going on. And now let's start mapping our booths. Okay, so let's just keep this real simple. And again, we're going to go with the 10 by 10s. So we go back to objects where the chair is, and we go to trade show, booth, and we're going to say a 10 by 10. This will likely be in your saved sizes. Like, I didn't necessarily save any of these. I think these are just default sizes. So see if you have that to save yourself a little bit of time. Otherwise, you can just put the measurements in there, either by inches or you can do it by feet. All right, so keep that in mind. Now, let's go ahead and place the first booth down. So we're going to go ahead on this wall right here and drop the booth by clicking on it. And we're going to rotate it so that the entrance of the booth is facing outwards. Okay, so you can kind of see like this little cutout in the booth. That just signifies that that's like the entrance or the front of the booth. Okay, so that'll help you as you start to go around the hall and put booths everywhere. So again, this is a 10 by 10. And let's say that you have a pack of 5 that are together. So if you click on it, you copy by either right clicking or doing it on your keyboard, and you paste. Now you can start to have booths that are together. Okay, so you can click and drag them. And a nice little trick is if you hold down the shift key and you drag your mouse, you can start to highlight multiple objects at once. So you can copy those and then paste those, and now all of a sudden you're copying and pasting many of them at the same time. Okay, so you can start to see how this is already taking shape for us. Now, we said we wanted to do a pack of 5, so let's go ahead and get a 5th one in place there. And there we go. That looks about right. Okay, so they're all together. That's a pack of 5. And now let's say there's an area here. We talked about this earlier in the video where sometimes in a facility there's areas that are off limits. Okay, so emergency exits, fire extinguishers, that sort of thing. Now let's say this area is basically, we can't use it. Okay. Now, you can mark that in a number of different ways, but I think maybe the easiest would just be some sort of line, okay? So if we go back to lines, this little ruler, and we go to the line tool, and if we click and drag, let's say that the area that we cannot use is 10 feet. Okay, so let's go ahead and make that line 10 feet. All right, so that's a 10-foot line right there. Now it's still kind of thin, so it's a little bit hard to see, and it's going to be hard to see once we have this whole thing filled in and there's a lot going on. All right, so you can actually adjust the thickness of the line, which is kind of nice, and that's by the line weight. So let's go ahead and pump that up quite a bit. Let's go to like 10, so it's just a nice thick area. All right, and let's use a different color this time. All right, so let's use red, of course, for do not use. That seems fitting. And if we drag the color around, we get all sorts of different customized colors, or if you have like a specific hex code that you like, you can put that here, but let's just go ahead and click on the red area here. All right, now that has made that red, and that to me looks like a pretty good sign that we can't use that area. All right, now let's return to the booths and say that we're going to put a pack of 3 here. All right, so go ahead and click and drag, again, holding down the shift key and then dragging your mouse. And then you can highlight as many booths as you need to and then paste what you've got. And there we go. So now we have our first 8 booths and an area that cannot be used. Now, of course, I'm just blindly, dropping this stuff down. If you have measurements in place, and let's say from the corner of the venue right here, you took your 100-foot tape measure and you went from the corner and you said, okay, I want a booth from the 15-foot marker all the way down. Well, then you can just get specific in this program and move things around very precisely. Okay, so you can do that, but I'm just giving you a very, very quick version of all this. Now, as we go around the hall, I'm going to go ahead and start to fill this in, and I'll kind of time lapse it to speed it up, but we're going to fill this in because this is all stuff that you have already been shown. So here we go. Okay, at this point, let me just stop and show you a couple of things. So we talked about the front of the booths being this little opening or this little cutout in the design. Okay. Now, as you can see, these are all facing the wrong way. All these booths are facing the wrong way. So a very, very easy fix for this is if we hold down the shift key and we drag and highlight all these booths, all that we have to do is hit this rotate button and they'll all turn. Okay, so you can see them starting to turn around, and there we go. So now we have them facing all the correct way. We'll do the same thing with these booths down here so that they're facing outwards. And then the same thing with these so that the openings are facing the hall and not the wall. Okay, so everything is looking pretty good here. Of course, I wasn't perfect, so you can see these aren't exactly up to the wall and snug. And then, of course, I left some gaps for, let's just say there's doors to restrooms or, maybe an emergency exit or something like that. So we've left some openings here. Now, if you want to start working on the inside, so we've done all the wall booths. And now let's say we're going to start mapping out all the booths that you want to have in the center of the facility. It's essentially the same thing. Okay, so let's say that you want to have packs of 5, which is kind of nice because as you begin to number all of your booths, this is going to make life a lot easier for you and the vendors. So let's grab this group of 4 here and we'll drop them up here. All right. We need one more, so we'll just take this one, we'll copy that one, add that to the row. Okay. And what we'll do is maybe we'll put it here, and then we'll copy this 5, and we'll paste it down here. Okay, we'll drag them and we're going to go ahead and spin them around. Okay, so like we like we looked at before with the rotating. We'll go like that. And then now we have a pack of 5 and a pack of 5, and the booths are back to back. This is very, very common with indoor craft fairs to see booths that are back to back, okay? So let's say we're satisfied with this, and we're gonna leave this bottom area kind of open and kind of free flowing, okay? Especially you like to have that near the entrance and exit where people are sort of clustering in and out. It's nice to have a little bit of a bigger area in those sections of the facility. Okay, so now as you can see here, I've left a pretty big aisle. So one way that you can kind of test this is to take a booth that you've already created, copy it, paste it, and look to see about how much room you're leaving for your aisles. Okay, so I've left about 12 feet here, but again, I want precision. I want things to be precise. I like 10 feet aisles. I think 10 feet aisles are kind of nice. It's, again, in that sweet spot of balance between making sure that you're filling the facility with plenty of booths to make it exciting for visitors, but also making it comfortable for the visitor experience. Okay, so if we wanted 10 feet, what we can do is just come down, make sure that these are touching. You can go like that, and then just take this entire row and make sure that those are touching. Okay, so we can get very, very precise with this. If we zoom way in, we're going to be able to zoom incredibly far in. Okay, so we'll take this, we'll go down, and as you can see, there's still a little bit of a gap there. Okay, so I could zoom way in, all the way in, and make this as precise as possible. Okay, so we'll select the entire group, we'll come down, and boom, there you are right there. And then we'll take our kind of like tester booth out, and there you are. Now we're left with 10 feet aisles all the way across. Okay, so now we're very, very precise. As we back out, now I'm going to show you the first time that we're going to look at the view in 3D. Okay, so this is very exciting. If you go up to view and you click down and you click on 3D view, it's going to open up a whole new tab and drop you into the facility. Okay, so this is what we have so far. You can click it and drag it, rotate it, do anything that you want with it. Okay, so there's our set of doors. Here's our admission booth. And then these are all the booths that we have so far. Okay, so again, the 10 feet aisles, you know, I think that's pretty good. Okay, I think that's like a nice sweet spot. Again, if you want to go more with it, and especially around the perimeter, sometimes around perimeters people will have a little bit bigger aisles, and then in the center they're slightly smaller. But do whatever you want to do. I'm just showing you how to set it up. Okay, but that is your 3D view. So we're going to go back to our overhead shot here, and we're going to begin to fill in the entire facility. Okay, so now this is something that you're going to run into as an organizer when you're coming up with your layout is now it seems like we have a little bit too much space here, and you know, it's not quite equal to these other areas. So this is where you can play with your aisles and use your aisle space to your advantage to make things feel uniform. Okay, so maybe we come down just a touch with this and make this aisle here a little bit bigger, and perhaps we bring this upwards a little bit so that now this all feels pretty even. Okay, pretty even. Now if we back out and we take a look at the entire layout, this is starting to come together pretty nicely. Okay, so let's say we've gotten to the point where, okay, I like the way everything looks and I'm very satisfied with the layout. I think things are going to be comfortable for people. Now you also have to take into account seating and those food areas that we talked about. So let's say, for example, you're like, oh shoot, well, where are people going to sit? So maybe you can eliminate this booth and say, okay, this back here is going to be like a nice little rest area. We're going to take this 10-foot booth out and we're going to put some seating in. So you come back to objects and you go to tables and seating at the top. And let's say that you're going to have round tables. These are typical of banquet facilities. So a lot of times the venues will have something like this and you can just use this. So let's say that you've got a round and it is 72 inches in diameter and you can place that right there. Okay. And there's seating for 10 on a big banquet table. That could be an option. As you explore the objects that are loaded in here, not only can you start to envision things a little bit better, but perhaps it'll actually just give you some good ideas of things that you can do. Okay, so be sure to look around and check out all the options because perhaps you'll stumble upon something that you wouldn't have thought of yourself. Maybe you want to label the seating a certain way. Okay, so you can change the color to like this blue right here and know that, okay, I'm going to have seating in a couple of different areas. And you can copy and paste. And everywhere that you see the blue, that's where you can have seating set up. Okay, maybe you want to have one right here, right in the middle of the action. All right, so feel free to play around with it and get creative. This is one of the fun things and fun aspects of being an organizer, I think, is just this is where you get to be kind of artistic with it and create a vision for your event. So have fun and just see what you can do. But one obvious thing that's still left to do here is to label the booths, okay? Because vendors are going to sign up for the show. You're going to assign them a booth and they need to know where they're going in the hall, okay? So one thing that I always liked to do was number around the perimeter first and then come in with a snake pattern because it's pretty easy for people to follow this type of pattern. Okay, so let's just say that this is going to be booth number 1. All right, and you can label it and you can increase the text size because that's pretty small. So let's say we're going to go up to like 40 for the text size. And you're just going to go all the way around and do this. Okay, so now let's say that you have numbered the entire facility. One of the things that we talked about earlier was making sure that you have your electrical booths assigned and that you know where they are in your layout. So if we look at this wall, for example, let's say we have booths 1 through 8, okay? And let's say that booths 2 and 6 have an electrical outlet with access. So you can take the number, and what I would recommend doing is instead of going with the number here, I would put an object name in and make sure that you have some sort of identifying mark on it that signifies electric. Okay, so you can even just put an E underneath it. So this is 1 and then 2E and then 6 is going to be 6E. And those are your electrical spots. Okay. Now, the reason why I have not yet talked about color when it comes to the booths is that later on in this series, I'm going to show you how to color coordinate your vendors by what they create. And that's extremely important when it comes to mapping out your layout. Woodworkers, I liked to use brown back in the day. Okay, so if we go to kind of like an orange and we drag, let's say right there, this hex code is going to be our brown color. Okay, all that you have to do is click on the color, copy the hex code, and let's say that this booth right here is also going to be a woodworker. All right, so all you have to do, copy and paste, and there you go. Now that one is that color. And let's say that 4 is a jewelry vendor. And let's just go with yellow and say that, okay, yellow is jewelry. And now let's say that this booth is also some sort of a jewelry vendor, and you can mark that as yellow. The reason why it becomes extremely significant to label your vendors by color is that you're going to be able to look at this layout now and be like, whoa, I have 2 woodworkers who are only 2 booths apart. I can't do that because that's way too close for, like, you know, competing vendors. So vendors are going to appreciate this tremendously. Okay. And this is where you're going to want to do it. You want to start to do this from the very beginning when you create your layout. And as you book your vendors and as you're starting to fill them in and assign their booths, you can visualize all this. Now, jumping ahead, we are going to talk about this later, but I'll tell you right now too, you do not want to reveal the booth numbers to the vendors too early or up until you are fully booked. Okay. Wait till the event is fully booked and you have everything set in stone. Then you can go ahead and reveal, because as you get towards the end and say, let's just say, for example, you only have like 5 booths remaining and the event is becoming more and more full, you're going to have to kind of get creative on where these vendors are getting placed, because you might want a vendor to sign up, but let's say that the only 5 spots that are left open, no matter where you put them, they're kind of too close to a competing vendor or something like that. It's just not going to work out. Then you have to move things around. Okay. So up until you are absolutely set in stone with your layout, do not tell your vendors their booth number. Okay. It's just going to save everybody a bunch of headaches and kind of backtracking. So I hope that you enjoyed this video today. This is as far as I want to take it. Just play around with it. I could probably talk for literally hours on how to do this and set things up and all of that, but I think I've gotten you to a pretty good point in the basics and how to, get this prepared and set up. But just again, I can't say this enough. Be absolutely precise with your measurements, because it is going to help you at this point. Okay. So again, this was episode number 7 in the How to Become a Craft Fair Organizer series. I hope you're enjoying it so far. If you got value out of this video, please like and subscribe. It helps tremendously, and I just very much appreciate it. And you won't miss out on future content that way. So it'll help you to stay in the know. Thank you for watching, and have yourself a great day.